Okay, moving on to the next type of chart that you may encounter, and it looks something like this. Once again, as you can see, we have a description, instructions, and the chart itself. To familiarize ourselves with the chart, we'll very quickly read the description. It says, the bar chart below shows the percentage of people owning different types of vehicles by fuel type in a European country. The instructions is, again, the same thing we've seen before. Summarize the information by selecting and reporting the main features and make comparisons where relevant. Now, the task has just told us that this is a bar chart. Now, similar to the line graph that we just saw, we have another vertical axis and a horizontal axis. So as you can see here, the vertical axis, we have different kinds of vehicles. We have vans, hatchbacks, sedans, SUVs, minivans, and trucks, right? Now, in the line graph, if you recall, the horizontal axis represented time. This time, there is no time. It's different types or different categories of the data. So if we're looking at vehicles here on the horizontal axis, we can see different categories, different classifications, different groups of vehicles. The vertical axis, which you can see here, again, similar to the line graph, represents data amounts or quantities. In this case, it's percentage of people, right? So putting this together with what we saw in the question, so the percentage of people owning different types of vehicles. So it shows vehicle ownership across different categories, right? So as you can see, we have quantities, once again, in percentages represented by the vertical axis, and different types or classifications of the data represented on the horizontal axis. Now, are we only viewing the different kinds of cars based on the type, like whether they're vans or hatchbacks or sedans? No. If you look a little closely, you'll see that there is a different criteria. There's a second criteria for dividing up the cars, and that is based on the fuel type. So here we can see electric, gas, and diesel cars, right? So electric cars, gas-fueled cars, and also diesel cars. So if someone were to ask me, on the horizontal axis, how many criteria do we have? How many variables do we have for the division of information? I would say there are 2. Now, don't get confused. You might say, hey, wait, van, hatchback, sedan, SUV, minivan, and truck, that's 6. How are you coming up with 2? You see, van, hatchback, sedan, SUV, minivan, and trucks, they are different categories of the same variable that's distinguishing, that is the type of vehicle. Another variable, which this time divides the information into 3 types, is the fuel type, right? So the 2 variables, the 2 criteria, let's call it criteria. The 2 criteria for dividing up the information are A, the types of vehicle, based on which we have 6 categories, and then we have fuel type, based on which we have 3 categories. Understanding this is very important, and we're going to practice it later, because this and understanding these types of classifications and categories will help us determine how many paragraphs we should write in the body section of our report. So this is going to later play a role in the way we present our report. Now, what kind of data are we dealing with here? Again, it's quantitative. How do we know it's quantitative? Because we have numbers. Whenever you look at a chart and you have percentages or numbers with units like kilograms, grams, and what have you, then you're dealing with quantitative data. So the line graph we saw before and the bar chart that we can see here, they are both showing quantitative data. But there is a difference. In the line graph, the quantitative data we saw was focused on changes, increases, decreases, stability, that kind of information. Whereas here in this chart, we don't see whether the number of people driving vans has increased or decreased. Time isn't a variable. So we're not talking really about increases, decreases, and fluctuations. Rather, here we're more interested in comparisons. So we can look at the chart and we can say that, for example, the category of cars which most people owned were sedans and SUVs. So more people owned sedans and SUVs there were more people who owned sedans and SUVs than those who owned vans, trucks, minivans, or hatchbacks. So you see, when I'm reporting this information, rather than talking about how something has increased, decreased, or changed, I'm more interested in drawing comparisons across categories, whether it is comparing vans to sedans or whether it is comparing gas cars to diesel cars. Sometimes the comparisons can even be more nuanced than that. For instance, you might be comparing the number of SUVs that are fueled by diesel to the number of sedan vehicles that are fueled by diesel. So as you can see, there's plenty of opportunity for us to compare across these various categories. So while in the line graph that focused on increases, decreases, and generally changes through time, we refer to the data as interval, here we refer to the data as discrete. So very briefly put, interval data is any type of data that focuses on changes across time. Discrete data, on the other hand, is any kind of data that doesn't focus on changes across time, but rather compares categories to each other. Thank you for watching all the way to the end. If you enjoyed this content, please share, like, and subscribe. Catch you all in the next one.